I knew this week would be tricky. I just knew I had too much to do before I flew. So, as you can tell by the background and possibly by my voice, I am in the middle of coaching a basketball tournament in Malaysia, but I have found some time. I'm going to eke it out. The goal will be to get it done before I go to bed on Friday night, which for some of you is Friday morning, and for others of you, I guess somewhere in between. So I will shut up. Let's get to it, because this is going to be a tough one to get through, and I got a ton to say. To go along with my lead in, I do have a lot to say, so I'm going to get right to it. I hope it's not too listy. Sometimes it's better when I only have like one thing to say and I kind of elaborate, but I don't know. Let's see how it rolls. I'm kind of framing this. I've followed and read and listened to and watched a few people over the years who often do things at the end of a fantasy season or end of a playoffs to say, these are the things we shouldn't forget next year when we draft or make these predictions, and then we usually forget them anyway. This is one I remembered from last year. I'm going to kind of have a few points just for future me. These are the things I should think about before next year's playoff pool when I'm trying to make some of these picks. Number one, it's not always the best team that goes through, but maybe the healthiest. And I didn't know this one with Detroit. Obviously, we had a huge upset. But I felt like Detroit had been hurt for so long and they just kind of dealt with it that I just assumed they could figure it out. But flip the coin, the other part of this is turnovers matter. And in that case, they had been dancing that line way too long. Goff had a few games where he just tossed out, I think it was, I think the highest was 5 throughout the season, and yet they were still winning some of those games. In this case, it took both of them to take Detroit down. And even when you look at it, it's kind of a shocking game. It's definitely one of those, let's play it 10 times, and 9 times it goes the other way. That's not to discredit Washington, but Detroit really was solid. But was is in the past tense, unfortunately, for the Beguiled Lions fans. I think the other thing that I often, just kind of not trivialize, I remember, but I don't always give stock to. We play this whole season, and it's supposed to matter, and yet then we go to the playoffs, and we completely change what home field advantage means. And I'm sorry, just if you play in a dome versus snow, it really isn't actually fair. Now, I know we don't care, and you're supposed to say, well, good teams will figure it out, and we can point to the good teams that figured it out, but most good teams don't always figure that out. Now, in this particular case, I don't think it actually impacted the Buffalo-Baltimore game. I do think you can make some arguments that weather really did affect some of the other games. But as much as I love during the regular season watching someone get hit and then slide for 10 yards on the ground, no knock, but that's not really what I want for playoff football. I know I'm not the voice of the majority on this one, but I kind of want skill sets to do it, not frozen hands. We're almost punishing some teams for being like technically good when you really just have to be big and run into people. Now, that is not to discredit. That game was actually pretty entertaining, but I'm also not giving credence to this idea that we need to make excuses when people make mistakes. But there were a bunch of mistakes in that game that I think maybe a frozen ball had something to do with, but I could be totally wrong. That flips us to another point that I had where big plays are always going to matter. Whether it's Saquon busting a bunch of big runs, just think how many he would have had if he wasn't stuck on the Giants for so many years, but that's another point for another day. The Allen with his feet, not necessarily his hands, it took them all game long to actually realize that that's just what they were going to do all the time, and eventually they kind of stopped him, and that's why it was a field goal. The fourth downs, both the calls, when you should have, when you shouldn't have, maybe when you should have had 11 people on the field, one of the few times Brady actually yelled something of importance. I know a lot gets made online, but a lot gets made of a lot of things online. Of the Chiefs and the quarterback, when we call, when we don't. I will be honest, I'm not necessarily a Chiefs hater, although I think if you were someone who was hanging on, for a lot of people, the do we love them, do we hate them meter had gone to the hate before, but I think now the general public now is tired of the Chiefs winning. But the slowdowns, the fake slides, that is something they probably have to address. Sorry, quarterbacks, you can't have it both ways. You can't just like get all the favorable calls, but then also milk it. If you're going to, like, there should be a clear, I'm going down, I'm just sliding fall. That way our 40-year-old white quarterbacks can save their Achilles even a little bit longer. But I think we also need to understand that if you're going to screw around, you're going to find out occasionally. And these are big dudes. You don't want to do the pause just to get it. But that's a whole other bit. And honestly, I have no interest in getting into the online hate. I think just people are tired of the Kelsey. They're tired of the Taylor Swift. I'm not. I don't really care. I've learned a long time ago. I can't yell at people to tell them what to like or what not to like. So you just kind of have to roll with it. But the other thing we're not talking about was Houston has missed a ton of kicks over the last few weeks. And as someone who did have the Houston kicker in one of my leagues, he was great until about 5 weeks ago, and then he was horrible. He left some extra points and some field goals on the board. So again, these kind of big epic plays, that is always a playoff fixture every single year. It's kind of why we like watching it. Looking ahead, we got some interesting potential rematches. A rematch of I'm going to say 22, but that's the 22 season. I think it was technically in 23 when the bowl was played, but the Super Bowl matchup of Philly and Kansas City. Again, I think the Kelsey haters don't want that because it's going to be so much conversation about him. Their podcast will probably be all about it. He'll probably propose at the end of the damn thing if he wins. I don't know. I don't really follow that. But that would be an interesting matchup and one that I think is a bit more probably expected. We could flip the coin and actually have a rematch of the 91-92 Super Bowl with Bills and Washington. Now, Buffalo, that might feel weird because you're going into this one actually, last year. It's not like you kick something wide right. So maybe this Super Bowl would be your dance. Obviously, any combination in between. I think realistically, we have three teams that at the beginning of the season were some people's favorites. You've got Buffalo as kind of that lovable loser that really should get to one or two sooner than later. Allen doesn't have that long of a shelf life, and let's be honest, they need more skill sets around them. We got Kansas City, who people just have seen so much. Obviously, they just win, so how can you really mess with that? Philly was supposed to be good, but they also hate each other, but they also have probably the best defense, so your guess is as good as mine. Realistically, I think for anyone just looking for chaos to reign, you got Washington, who now Daniels is going to be referred to as the greatest rookie quarterback, and there'll be a few fan bases that are upset with that. But in terms of success level, I know some people got this far, the Roethlisbergers and the Bradys, but the team really is Daniels' identity. They go where he goes, so I'm along for the ride, but I don't know if that ride gets us all the way to the Super Bowl. Either way, super exciting. A lot obviously happened. Upsets went down. Our most popular players went down. So let's see how that impacted our pool. Congrats goes to Kent Rushke. You held on for both week 1 and week 2. Now the big key is going to come. Can you hang on when it counts on the last 2 weeks? You do only have 3 players left, although some of them obviously have some weight to them. They're not unique players, though. You've got the 2 of the more common running backs and a common quarterback that's left, because 2 very common quarterbacks got the axe. I can already tell the emails have already started to come in. I'm just letting you know, yes, a lot of people have called for their sub this week. That's fairly common, I think. I will not be saying who, what, where, and actually I haven't even looked at what people are doing, although I will announce, because I like to keep this above table, my dogs pool will be making their move this week. My personal pool, that's a little bit further down, will not. I got both my quarterbacks. I called Daniels to go for a little bit further. Didn't know if I know it'd go this far, but hey, I'm loving it. I will also say that in previous years, people with a lot of people left in the middle of the pack have actually still done quite well, because you have unique players left, which is the weird part about this pool. That's what I think it makes it fun. Longevity actually does matter. So we have Kent on top. He doesn't have a huge lead, and obviously Kak here, I'm sorry, it's just the name I was told to give you. You're a friend of a friend here, so if you'd like me to refer to you by any other name, please tell me. You've got a few extra players, and actually the benefit that this particular gentleman had, I did just look at the top 5, so if you're 6 and down, don't yell at me if you have both your quarterbacks. In fact, I'm 17th and have both mine. He does have both quarterbacks still kicking, so as a second place, I would say he's a favorite to do real well this week. Rennie in third does have at least a unique player in one of his wide receivers. Ben going down does not have as many, but he does have kind of a depth. He has A.J. Brown, but a few other people do. Take a look at the people above you, below you. And sorry, I should say, Will, you're yelling at me right now because I did say top 5 and I'm not talking about you. He has one of his quarterbacks and not a commonly taken quarterback. So some people have some reasons to think that this could be their week. Now, I do think it's a good week to use your extra person just because then you get 2 weeks out of them if you call it right. Like I said, the only reason why I am personally not in my one that's named after me is because I have both my quarterbacks and I am going to be using my own quarterback. Feel free to make fun of me at the end of the year if that blows up in my face, which is likely. We can kind of take down, like I said, we have some 7 and 8 down here, so look for some movement there. I do think we have some people with 1, 3. I think the pool is over for you if you're at the bottom in that particular case, but crazier things have happened. Still put your sub in. You don't want to leave anyone on the bench. You might as well get it all settled on the field. So should be an exciting week. Just a quick look for those who love their stats. Right now, Daniels is the highest scoring overall quarterback. Lamar being out, Allen likely to overtake him unless you really think Daniels is going to make that push and go all the way, which, hey, is possible. Crazier things have happened. Mahomes being quite a surprise here. He was quite low, but that's kind of been his year. We'll see if he has to step up in the next couple weeks. In terms of running back, not surprisingly, Saquon did just pass Henry, even though he had a kind of mediocre week 1, at least in our pool standards. A lot of the people like Mixon and Gibbs still were worth it. Gibbs probably bang for your buck, 29 in 1 week, but then obviously, he only got 1 crack at it. That was the most common. There's only 1 person who didn't take him. So that's not going to have a huge impact in our pool. In terms of wide receivers, maybe not so surprisingly, if the quarterback's number 1, why not the wide receiver 2? Because it's wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2 in Brown and McLovin. Kelsey's probably one of the more standard ones at 17 that got points. Goddard at 15. By the way, I put in people that not everyone had. I just put in people that actually got you points because I want people to think about that a little bit. Actually, some of our most common wide receivers didn't really get us a whole lot of love. So we'll talk about that maybe in the year end. Shakir, a bunch of people do have him though at 12. Samuel, not quite as much. I do keep track of people who have, people who were taken. We won't need to focus too much at the bottom of the pool, but crazier things have happened. Anyway, that's enough of some of the stats. We've seen what's going on. Now let's just get ahead to the end here so we can get right to putting this thing out into the universe. Well, crew, that's it. That's all. We've got 3 games left, 2 this weekend at the normal place and time. Then there'll be a break for the Super Bowl. I will get the video out, though, in the week after. At least that's what I'm saying to myself. And if I say it out loud, then it just magically has to happen. Let's see how long this takes me to edit during a basketball tournament. If you hear squeaks in the background, you'll know why. Anywho, best of luck next week, folks.